thank you so much for everyone for coming this afternoon to our first Disability Mentoring Day. So I'd like to first get started with a video from President Stanley. Unfortunately, he couldn't join us today for the discussion, but he did send us this video to kind of welcome and warm us to this event. So.
Hello, I'm Sam Stanley, President of Stony Brook University. Welcome to Disability Mentoring Day, an event designed to encourage ability diversity in STEM education. Promoting diversity in science, technology, engineering, and mathematics is one of our most important missions. Yet disabled students and researchers Hello, I'm Sam Stanley, President of Stony Brook University. Welcome to Disability Mentoring Day, an event designed to encourage ability diversity in STEM education. Promoting diversity in science, technology, engineering, and mathematics is one of our most important missions. Yet disabled students and researchers face both visible and invisible barriers that prevent them from excelling in STEM fields. Today's program will address some of these issues and start a dialogue that will raise awareness of the ways in which the Stony Brook community can support students, faculty, and staff of all abilities. Thomas Woodson, Assistant Professor in the Department of Technology and Society, recognized the need for disability awareness in STEM and created this program, which received a presidential mini-grant for departmental diversity initiatives. I am proud to support and fund these grants, which continue to foster the projects that are the seeds of growth for the university. Through our mini-grant program and the Plan for Equity, Inclusion, and Diversity, many initiatives are already underway to help take us to the next level in enhancing student, faculty, and staff diversity and building an inclusive community. I look forward to the outcome of today's discussion and how it will positively impact our Seawolves family. We are committed to making Stony Brook a more welcoming place to all people, no matter their gender, race, orientation, or ability. Thank you for joining together to help each member of our community become the best they can be. Thank you, and enjoy the afternoon.
Thank you so much. Well, as you see, that there's a need for Disability Mentoring Day to help increase awareness for people with different abilities. As even the video wasn't captioned. That was probably a mistake of ours, just an oversight, not captioning a video for an event like this. And so I'm so sorry for that oversight. First, thank you for coming. This is a vision I had starting probably since February. I noticed that there's a need for more discussions around ability diversity in STEM education. And so I was able to write a small mini grant to host this event, and through some colleagues on campus, we were able to put together our first Disability Mentoring Day. October is considered Disability Awareness Month, and the third Wednesday of each October is Disability Mentoring Day. And so around the country, organizations, companies host different events to encourage diversity in terms of ability diversity. And so this is Stony Brook's first Disability Mentoring Day. I'd like to introduce our keynote speaker here from Ohio State. He has an illustrious bio, so I don't want to spend too much time on his bio, but he's the ADA coordinator at Ohio State University, and he has spoken across the country on disability issues. And so I'd like to welcome our keynote speaker, Scott Lissner.
Thank you. So do I need, that's working. Okay, I don't need two mics. Good. So I do have a PowerPoint. I'd like to do a couple of introductory things before I really start talking about what's in the PowerPoint. And we are at the last slide in the PowerPoint. There we go, that's better. A couple of kind of things first. So these kinds of presentations are always more interesting for me when I can get what I want to convey conveyed by talking to you and answering your questions. So don't let the fact that there's pictures up there and words up there stop you from waving your hands, asking me a question. I may go, I'm going to finish my point before I talk to you. But I'm also more than willing to make it more interactive. It's a nice sized group. There's room to do that. Trust me, you won't stop me from saying what I want to say, no matter how hard you try. So They also say on my campus, I can fill any void. They are usually not laughing when they say that. I can certainly fill the time and will. So I've been doing this one way or another for a long time. And so I wanted to do a little bit of context around kind of the expectations in the ADA and disability rights. Fairly recently, I've started doing kind of 7,000 years of disability history in 7 minutes. I'm not going to quite do that with you, but we may back up a little bit to make a few points. And so the quote I kind of started off with when I was asked to come do this presentation is from a performance artist and poet named Neil Marcus. And the quote is, "Disability is not a brave struggle or courage in the face of adversity. Disability is an art, an ingenious way to live." On two different dimensions, I think disability encourages a lot of innovation and creativity. On the one side of that is that when you have a disability, when you interact with a world that isn't designed to make life easy for you, you get really creative in problem solving, or you don't get very far sometimes. And so there's that side of the creativity. It brings that diversity to the table. And then there's the effort from others on behalf of people with disability that drives a certain amount of creativity in the application of theory, in the application of technology, in the application of all kinds of things. So it comes at it from two different dimensions. So I'm pretty fond of Neil Marcus's statement, and I thought it was a good starting point for a conversation that involved sponsorship from technology and society. That seemed to make a whole lot of sense. So the images that are up there are kind of a semi-random collection. It's a little bit of a history of the wheelchair, if you will. So the kind of yellowish faded image in the corner, that's a very small, here's the point I really want to make with that. It's a very small piece. It's in essence about a 4x6, 4x5 section of a Japanese screen painting from the 1300s in Tokyo of a street scene that is about the size of the back wall of this room. And this is just one coincidental image. This is not the focus of the painting, right? It is just a street scene in old Edo. And I understand from the art historians who have looked at it, not because I'm that smart, that given the robe the guy in the little cart is wearing, he's probably like a retired merchant or a retired professional, if you will, of some sort, someone with some wealth who's got a little wheeled cart and is propelling himself. That's from about the 1400s in old Edo. About that time, the government in Japan, or the various shogunates, the regional governments in Japan, were training individuals who were blind, in particular, to be itinerant acupuncturist and masseuse. I'm not quite sure how acupuncture and blindness really works very well, but that's, there were guilds and training, and it was a guild setup. They were training individuals who were to do other kinds of work. And so those were, they had a guild system, and they were actually training folks about the same time in Europe, not pictured here. Louis the Ninth in France started training beggars with disabilities so that they could legally beg for money. And so that was really kind of the first instance of documenting a disability. You had to prove you actually had a disability so you could beg on the streets of Paris, so to speak. And so they wore little uniforms so that they would be recognized as legitimate beggars and not cheating the system, so to speak. Down in the corner is from about the 1400s in Europe. It's not showing up really great, but it's a guy in a little three-wheel cart. The front wheel of the cart has gear teeth on it, and he's hand cranking it. And so it's a little self-propelled that propels with a gear system, so it's more like a bicycle in terms of how it locomotes. Then I've got a pretty standard wheelchair up there that we've all seen at the that was spec'd out around World War II. That became the standard dimensions for a wheelchair. And then next to that is someone in an iBot going down the stairs, I think, in this. No, he's going up the stairs. You back up the stairs in an iBot. So that was a wheelchair with 3 gyroscopes. So it would stand up on its back wheels, and you could push it, lean back heavily on it, and it would jump up the steps, and it would stay upright. Developed a guy named Dean Kamens, who's done a lot of medical technology development, a lot of drug delivery systems and insulin delivery systems, and he developed the iBot and its system. And when the major insurance industry didn't immediately approve it as a medical device that would be funded through insurers, a whole different political story we won't go into today, he took that same technology and adapted it and developed the Segway. So he's also the inventor of the Segway, but the Segway was a commercial knockoff from the iBot, which is really what he developed first, was the wheelchair. So in the far corner is a guy who uses a Segway to get around our medical center, right? So, I mean, that is one string of looking at technology and development over time and applying. Some of that was applying what was out there. Some of that was applying it in new ways. Some of that was really rather new. So I'm not sure where the guy who did the gear wheel in front got that idea from, other than clockwork, but I'm not sure it had been adequately, largely applied to transportation at that stage of the game. So just to jump back a little bit more for fun, around 4000 to 3000 BCE, right? So Nuwuda, boy, that's going to mess you up, right? Ergeltlem, or known as Nuwuda's Silverhand, maybe that's easier, is a piece from Celtic mythology who presumably was based on an actual warrior chief who lost hand in battle, and it was replaced by a smith with a silver hand, hence Nuwuda's silver hand. That's a statue that's very detailed of him. And so there was in the mythology, the laws, the traditions of the day, if you were imperfect, you couldn't serve as the chief, as the king. And so he had the silver hand prosthetic so that he would be whole again and could go back into battle leading his people. That was the theory. So it's kind of one of the first 2 or so recorded instances discussing prosthetic devices. There was a slightly earlier one, tradition in India, in the Vedic tradition in India. And then on the other side, I'll be kind, it's Namu, Urnamu, who was, we found a clay tablet, that's a statue of King Ur. We found a clay tablet, not me personally, they found a clay tablet, describing the rules as he was constructing his cities, his palaces and his royal city. That was the first recorded instance of workers' comp. So it actually said in the tablet that if you're working on construction and you lose an arm, we'll compensate you this much. If you lose a leg, that much. If you lose your vision, so much. There was a whole table of body parts and compensation that was built into that. So it was apparently one of the first structured workers' comp programs out there, which gives you another dimension that we think about when we think about disability. So now I'm going to jump way ahead. We are now in the 1900s, leading up to World War II. In the US, there was a eugenics movement. How many people know the eugenics movement in the US? A couple, all right, that's pretty good. So we took what we learned about breeding cattle and peas, and science, or at least some parts of science, wanted to apply that to the general human population so that we could breed away disease and problems and have a healthier, cleaner human race. On the map of the United States that's out there, the striped states, which add up to about 30, all had laws on the books about forced sterilization for individuals who were, usually the phrase was, physically, mentally, or morally disabled. Not, depending on the state, they defined that in different ways, but there was actually forced sterilization laws at almost every state. The ones in black, the another 7 or so in black, had pending laws on the books when discoveries in Nazi Germany in World War II made it very unpopular to have this conversation about genetic racial purity and health, and everybody kind of stopped promoting that largely, right? The little inset box down in the corner is a picture of Oliver Wendell Holmes, a Supreme Court justice. There was a case in Virginia, Buck v. Bell was the Supreme Court case, and it was about whether or not forced sterilization was legal under the Constitution. And so Buck took the state to court, got all the way up to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court decided it was legal. And the famous quote from the case was from Oliver Wendell Holmes, who is usually thought of as a pretty decent jurist. And the quote reads, "3 generations of imbeciles are enough." And so it was justifying as a matter of public policy that these laws did good, that overrated its things, overrated that. At the same time this was going on, there were ugly laws in most municipal level laws. Ugly laws suggested that if you were deformed and unattractive and offensive to the general public, you should not be out in public. Many of those laws stayed on the books for quite a while. They weren't enforced much after World War II, but they stayed on the books. In Columbus, there was a law on the books until about 1976, when a gentleman with cerebral palsy who was reasonably spastic, had twitches, was in a restaurant with a friend, and the owner of the restaurant said, "I'm going to have to ask you to leave." And he was like, "Why?" And he says, "Because you're bothering my other customers." And he was like incensed and said, "You can't do that." And he said, "Oh yeah, I can. There's a law in the books." About 3 weeks later, it was off the books.